All right, I can wing it. No notes. Okay, so thanks for having us. I'm Sarah Rickard. I work at DEC in Division of Water. I work on the assessment and listing program. So I'm going to give you an overview of that program. Tony Giacomo is going to talk about clean water planning, and Lauren Townley is going to give an overview of funding opportunities. This is our Division of Water water wheel. This represents how our water quality programs interact with each other. You can see monitoring sort of kicks it all off. Our water quality monitoring informs our assessment program, and then our assessment program informs planning and management efforts, which then inform our implementation and permitting and compliance and enforcement. So here's the assessment at the top, and I'll give you some background on that. The Clean Water Act requires states to report on the quality of their waters every 2 years. This is the report on all the waters of the state. That those assessments are known as the 305B report. So every water body has an assessment, and it's compiled into what we call the 305B report. The waters that are not meeting water quality standards, those are reported to EPA as the 303D list. And EPA considers this a continuous planning process, and it is known as integrated reporting. So to conduct an assessment, we first need to find out what the classification of the water body is. Our classifications tell us which best uses we need to assess, and then what water quality standards to apply to those assessments. Water quality standards are thresholds of pollutants that are meant to protect the best uses of the water body. So these tables show you our classifications on the horizontal axis, and it'll show you the uses that that classification should be supporting. So you can see in our freshwaters or Class A's, they are supportive of source of water supply, primary and secondary contact recreation, and fishing. Our Class B's, not supportive of source of water supply, but supportive of primary, secondary, and fishing. And then our C's and D's are protective of fishing. We have a similar table for our saline waters, but that does not pertain to you guys. But you'll just see that we don't have a source of water supply for our saline waters. We have a shell fishing use for those SAs. So this image just kind of shows you the whole process. Once we have our classifications and we know which best uses to assess, we'll take in our monitoring data, compare it to our standards and our guidance values, come up with a best use assessment, and then the worst case scenario of those best use assessments are what is applied to the water body assessment. So if you remember, we have that Class A water body that has all of the best uses, source of water supply, primary and secondary, and fishing. If only fishing were impaired, the whole water would be impaired. So those are the how we establish the water bodies that end up on the 303D list. So that process is detailed in what we call our COM, Consolidated Assessment and Listing Methodology, and states are required to submit to EPA the methods that they use for determining their assessments. So the regulations require a description of the methods to assess water quality, an explanation of how we assemble water quality data, and how it is used to determine attainment status with water quality standards. We also include there in our COM our data quality requirements and data quantity requirements, and that really gets to the third bullet, our decision rationales not to use available data. So our data quality requirements are specific. We require for use in assessment that data be collected following a quality assurance project plan, that data quality indicators are met, so the data needs to demonstrate precision, accuracy, bias, representativeness, and then completeness, comparability, and sensitivity. The data that's submitted should be accompanied by a data usability assessment report and be analyzed by an ELAP accredited lab for parameters that DOH certifies. And then finally, we need the data to be reflective of parameters that we have adopted water quality standards for, or the supplemental indicators that we identify in the COM. Our data quantity requirements, the data needs to be less than 10 years old, and we need at least 2 years of data because we need to capture any seasonal variability. For our ponded waters, we require 6 samples, and for our flowing waters, we require 8. This is a nice image explaining integrated reporting, sort of breaking it out. It is in the COM, but I'll walk through it really quick. Again, the integrated report is made up of the 305B report, which is the assessment of all waters, and each water is assigned one of these IR categories. So the IR category 1 is where all of the uses have been assessed, and they've been assessed as fully supported. IR category 2 is where some of the uses have been assessed, but those are assessed as fully supported. IR3 are the unassessed waters and the waters that have insufficient information. So maybe the waters that don't have enough data, and resulted in an unconfirmed assessment, those would fall in the IR category 3. For our impaired waters, but a TMDL is not required, either because one's been completed, there is another plan in place, or the impairment is due to pollution, not a pollutant that can be controlled by a TMDL. And then IR category 5, those are impaired waters where a TMDL is required. That's the 303D list. EPA recently introduced IR category 5 alt, and those waters are impaired. A TMDL is required, but there's an alternative restoration plan that's expected to attain standards. So that's a way of categorizing those waters where we have those ARPs. But both of those are the 303D list of impaired waters. We follow an integrated reporting schedule. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a continuous planning process. We are always working on it. We're always looking at our own DEC monitoring data. For the 2024 integrated report, we wrapped up the data solicitation at the end of September this year. That data is being reviewed, and data that is usable will be used to update the 2024 integrated report. And the unusable data, we will be contacting folks to go over why we couldn't use it. The 2020/2022 303D list, an integrated report, that's being wrapped up, and our response to comments is also being wrapped up. And once those are submitted to EPA, we will be sharing those with the public. And here are some resources where you can access our monitoring data. We have a portal on our website, and we'll share this with you guys, where you can go into the water body that you're interested in and see, what data we have available for that. And, it's got a lot of great filter features and everything with this mapper. We also have the CSLAP reports online. Those are available to the public, so you can go in and check out any of the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program fact sheets for a water body of interest. And then we have the DEC info locator, where you can actually get the assessment fact sheets that we developed from the assessment program. So you can enter DEC info locator, select the water body inventory, priority water bodies list, and then zoom into the water body of interest, and it will pull up the assessment for that water body. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Tony.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm on a little bit of a delay. I'm still seeing the info locator screen. Is that me?
How about now?
There we go. Thank
Oh,
you.
yep.
I'm at home on the Wi-Fi, which I've got 2 teenagers that are probably actively using it. Thanks, Sarah. So, right, so that's sort of the background, the monitoring, assessment, the procedures. I'm going to talk a little bit about clean water plans, kind of, one of the spokes on that water wheel. So there are different types of watershed plans. Some are required if a water body is impaired, according to the criteria Sarah talked about. Some are not that, but all are watershed-based approaches that outline a strategy to improve or restore water quality. The ones you're probably most familiar with are TMDLs or 9-element plans. These 2 types of plans document pollutant sources and loadings to the water body. They're used to determine allowable pollutant level that a water body can receive and still maintain its water quality standard for the pollutant of interest. And they recommend actions that will improve or restore or protect water quality. Okay, sir. So comparing 9-element plans and TMDLs, they are very, very similar for all intents and purposes. In New York, we handle the kind of the loading analyses and the characterization of the sources and the watersheds for 9-element plans and TMDLs the same way through the development of mathematical or mechanistic watershed models. For 9-element plans, they tend to be better for non-point sources. They do not have a public comment period, although they do have extensive public participation throughout the process because they are kind of initiated and driven from the local stakeholders. Implementation strategy and plan is required. 9-element plans are only approved by the DEC. EPA does not approve 9-element plans, so the approval process kind of rests with us and our authority. And the completion of a 9E plan makes the watershed kind of in question eligible for state and federal grant opportunities through prioritized scoring for the various categories that Lauren's going to talk about a little bit in a few slides. TMDLs tend to be better for point source watersheds, dominated watersheds, because of the regulatory component and because as Sarah indicated on the integrated reporting schedule, a water body on the 303D list can't move from IR5 off of IR5 until it has a TMDL or another EPA approved plan approved. There is a public comment period for TMDLs. Implementation sections are optional, but in New York, Lauren will hop in if I'm wrong, but New York builds implementation sections into our TMDLs as part of our process. Approval is with the EPA, and again, the eligibility is similar in New York for our state scoring opportunities for our state grant programs. Okay, Sarah. So this table is showing the 9 elements of a 9-element plan. Of course, they're lettered A through H, it's just how it's set up. But you see what's kind of required for a 9-element plan with all of the check marks, and how a TMDL kind of directly compares with a 9-element plan. And you can see that the analysis and the ability of the plan to kind of get at actions that will meet the water quality standard, identify practices to get there, the outreach, the criteria to assess water quality improvement through monitoring plans are all the same. The only differences are really with elements D and F, but we in New York, when we write TMDLs, we include in our reasonable assurance section, some of those resources to kind of access financial resources to implement what needs to be implemented to implement the plan. Okay, Sarah. And for Cayuga Lake, I'm sure you're all aware of this, but kind of looking at the planning documents that Cayuga Watershed has already established, you've got the Cayuga Lake Watershed Restoration Protection Plan, which was not a DEC plan, but it was a local plan through a DOS grant. Someone on the phone will correct me if I'm wrong on that. The HABS Action Plan in 2018 was designed to specifically look at the kind of the recent HABS issue on Cayuga Lake. It had priority actions defined in section 13. And the nice thing about the HABS action plan for the 12 priority water bodies for which they were completed, and Cayuga Lake was one of them, was that in that state grant scoring criteria, we included HAB's action plan completion and approval right alongside in the same category as having a completed TMDL or 9-element plan. And I know Lauren's going to talk about a few of the projects that have been implemented in Cayuga Lake's watershed. I'm not sure if they use the HAB's action plan specifically, but I'm sure it didn't hurt. The draft Cayuga Lake TMDL, which you all know, and several DWISPs, drinking water source protection plans, have been developed or in development to continue to organize thoughts, implementation strategies, and resources around improving and maintaining water quality in Cayuga Lake. And those are just a snippet of the plans. Each of the soil and water conservation districts have strategic plans, AEM plans, and that's not including the municipalities and local other plans that are kind of being used by folks to, drive the ship in terms of implementation. Next.
Great. So I'm going to just talk really briefly about some funding opportunities and kind of building on what Tony just talked about regarding clean water plans. So just wanted to mention that for the purposes of some of our Division of Water grant programs, such as our Water Quality Improvement Project Program, or WQIP, or our non-point source planning grant, which we call NPG, TMDL's 90 plans and HAB's action plans are considered equivalent in terms of priority. So projects that fall under or implement goals of any of those types of clean water plans are prioritized for funding under those two grants in particular. And then the other thing I wanted to mention too, that I'm not sure if folks are aware of, but DEC is participating in community assistance teams, or CATs. It's a fairly new concept that the Environmental Facilities Corporation is organizing, but we are one of several different state agencies, including Department of Health, Department of State, Homes and Community Renewal, along with EFC, where we will provide assistance to municipalities or other organizations that are interested in applying for water infrastructure grants. Especially there's a lot of funding out there, a lot of different grant programs, and it can be kind of confusing to decide which one is the best for a particular project that you might be interested in. So through these community assistance teams, essentially get access to all of the state agencies together. We do consultations with anybody that's interested, so you can ask questions. There's webinars that are available. We have a monthly Q&A webinar that's hosted. Anybody can call in to ask any questions about grants from any of the different agencies. We travel around the state as well and attend conferences and hold our own conferences so people can meet with us in person if they would like that more so than a webinar. But we have a link to the website to get more information on these teams, but it's just something that we try to promote to get access to more information. We would like to get the funding out there to the right people. So you can go ahead, next slide. And Tony was nice enough to pull up some example grants that were awarded through our WQIP program in the watershed. So this is just a sampling. Again, our WQIP program covers multiple different project types. So we fund wastewater projects, non-point source projects, salt storage, land acquisition for source water protection, dam safety was added. We're looking at new categories for our next round, which will be coming out hopefully in May with a consolidated funding application. So we're just looking to expand our program over time, but we're glad to see that, right within the watershed already taking advantage of that funding that has been made available. And so this is, we'll definitely share this presentation with folks. You don't have to necessarily jot down all of these links, but just wanted to give you the links to our website for our quality assurance, which Sarah touched on, the COM document, which is our methods. That also Sarah mentioned, the WQIP and NPG programs, and the community assistance team webpage. And again, we can take questions now, but if you think of anything after the fact too and want to shoot us an email or give us a call, excuse me. This is all of our contact information, so you can reach out to one or all of us if you have questions in the future too. But that's all we had. So yeah, if you guys have anything, feel free to put something in the chat or just unmute yourself.
Well, thanks much. That was a great, quick and thorough cover of a broad topic. I'm sure there are questions. I know that Darby may have shared some with you. Maybe she can ask some of those if we don't have some live questions right now. Are there folks that have questions right now for any of the presenters?
I'll say the elephant in the room. I noticed there's still a draft in the TMDO.
There is.
That's
I unfortunately I don't have an update that I can share with you tonight. But I'll leave it at that. I'll say that it's not something that's sitting idle. We're actively responding to comments and revising, but no update to share.
You're a good sport,
anything
Tony.
we could do on
Well,
our
but
end.
I'm sorry.
Is there anything we could do on our end?
No, I don't think so. And I think one of the things that's I've tried to remind folks is that, you know, the completion of the draft, right, and its kind of availability online, and the HABS action plan kind of get that lift out of the way for Cayuga Lake stakeholders to kind of use those to go after those state grants and to get the prioritized scoring. So other than the draft kind of out there and just not finished yet, you know, use it as much as you can to get those dollars. And I will say that, you know, we didn't really touch on the Climate Infrastructure Act or the Bond Act, but all of those resources are you know, available through, you know, various grant programs as well. So.
And so speaking of things in draft, the 303D list from 2020, 2022, I know we submitted a lot of comments on this group and some others in the watershed. So what's the status of that?
We are hoping to get it submitted to EPA soon. Once we submit it, we'll definitely share response to comments on our website. If you're signed up for Making Waves, you'll get the notification along with the final list. That's all I can really share for you.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I have a couple questions on that theme. We did notice that the COM was recently updated in May of 2023. Is there a comparison document that shows what the differences are? And then, I mean, was that opened for public comment in the update round?
At the beginning of the COM, there is a summary of changes. So you can refer to that for those. There were not significant changes for this update. This is a continuous process. We're always, you know, trying to improve how we apply our science. So there will be updates probably every version. We do release it with the draft 303D list. So that does go out at the same time. So stay tuned for the 2024 iteration, and you know, if there are any changes to the COM at that point.
I have a question about the fact sheets that I guess start at the very base of this whole process. I haven't looked at them for a while, but when I did, there's supposed to be a comment process for them in case you want to provide feedback. And I guess I've never seen that happen.
Well, the public process that we follow is for the 303D list. Because that gets approved by EPA, we do want to put that out for public comment. The assessments themselves that are not on the 303D list, those do not get approved by EPA. So we release those. You know, I think we are never discouraging of folks submitting comments, but it isn't part of that regulatory public comment process.
Okay. Liz Kreitinger?
Hey, I was wondering if you all could clarify pollution versus a pollutant.
Sure. So we have a 4C list of waters, and a lot of the listings there are like algal weed growth, where we see algal pollution, but not necessarily HABs. You have to kind of dig into what that data is. But something that, we wouldn't be able to control with a TMDL. Another one is like, we have flow in 4C, so where there may be an impoundment causing flow impacts, that would be a 4C listing. Does that help?
Sarah, those are EPA definitions, right? Are those?
Yeah, the IR categories are from EPA guidance. So they understand that not everything on the 303D list or everything that is impaired can be controlled by a TMDL. So this is another category that they created for states to look at impoundment effects or invasive species, things like that. And I'll share with you, if you're interested in learning more about sort of the EPA side of integrated reporting, they issue an integrated reporting memo every 2 years to kind of kick off the integrated reporting cycle. And that really is where states get a lot of their methodology from, because it's, what they're guiding states to do. So you can kind of break into those IR categories by looking further into those memos.
Go ahead, Tian.
Could you talk to us a little bit more about the community assistance teams, what that would look like?
Yeah.
Individual. Go ahead.
So essentially, if you check out the EFC website, there's an opportunity where you can, submit an inquiry. It goes to the coordinator, Nick, at EFC, who's coordinating with the other agencies. And essentially, if you have go ahead.
EFC is, okay,
EFC.
EFC.
I'm sorry, so many acronyms.
I know.
Environmental Facilities Corporation.
Okay, right.
So they handle a lot of the infrastructure funding related to water. We also have companion infrastructure funding, so we work really closely with them. And then, this was set up, they are the organizing agency, but they have contacts at all the other state agencies that do water infrastructure funding. So they will, if you have a particular question, you don't even know where to start, you could start with them, and then they will get in contact with the other agencies to help answer that question. So a lot of what we see is, folks are just looking they have an idea for a project, they don't even know which grant to look at first. He sort of triages those questions and gets them to the right agency. The other opportunity is, when we go out and do presentations or attend conferences, we do those in-person consultations. So we literally will sit down, we block a couple of hours during those conferences, and folks can sign up for a time slot. And then you can come and ask questions to each of the agencies in person, and we all send a representative to those.
Okay, when you say conferences, you're talking like the Association of Towns, NICOM?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we attend all of those. And then there's been specific conferences just for the community assistance team. So we've done standalone conferences as well. But we usually like to go to those types of conferences where we know a lot of municipalities will be represented, and we can get in touch with a lot of people all in one place. So we attended there was a drinking water conference in Buffalo over the in past fall, and so we attended that just as an example. There's a calendar on I believe there's a calendar on the EFC website as well, where they show, where we're going to be. And there's links again to those webinars. So we're trying to do a mix of in-person as well as webinars, because we know not everybody can travel, to make those dates. So like I said, we have a standing monthly Q&A session where people can call in to ask questions. We've also been rotating and doing regional specific webinars. So again, that's on the calendar, where we'll do our presentation specifically for a particular region. So I believe we did one in Central New York a couple months ago, but we've been rotating across the state doing these webinars as well.
Okay, and all right, it's through the Environmental Facilities Corp. Is it mostly, I'm sorry, I can't recall totally the projects that you identified that had received assistance, but I think one was Union Springs, their either wastewater or water treatment facility. There was a stream bank stabilization project on that list. So are these are not necessarily confined to water and sewer projects. They can be other sorts of water quality improvement projects.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so DC, through our WQIP program, we have a pretty broad spectrum of what we're funding.
Okay.
So a lot of it is the water infrastructure, but we also have a non-point source category as well, land acquisition, dam safety, as I mentioned. So some of the other agencies are a little bit more specific to just infrastructure funding. But we have a pretty broad program. And like I said, with the Bond Act funding that's coming through, we're looking to probably expand the types of projects that we're going to be funding under WQIP starting this year.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Speaking of that funding, any ideas when we're going to hear about WQIP or the non-point source grants? I know some people are really getting jammed up with work plan development for the year and just where things are going without the grant funding in hand yet.
Yeah, that's a good question. We're in the very final stages right before announcement. So I'm hoping that we will be announcing awards in February. And then we're already working on the next round. So that will likely come out in May.
Hi, I have a quick question. Oh, sorry, Rocky.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So at Community Science Institute, we have an extensive network of volunteer monitoring that we do on the streams in the Cayuga Lake Watershed and elsewhere. We follow QUAP, we're an ELAP certified lab. And this past summer, we were really fortunate to have the opportunity to submit some data through the integrated reporting request. And I'm just wondering, if we see something that's really alarming that stands out to us, is there an opportunity for us to connect and communicate with you in a way that's maybe a little bit faster than the IR reporting process?
Well, for integrated reporting, we do have to stick to the schedule that we're on. But I mean, I think if you see something alarming, we would probably direct you to the region for direct action. But as far as assessments go, we do have to stick to that schedule.
Now, if I may, I don't want to interrupt Liz and take her spot away from her. Okay, thanks, Liz. What if it's something like high nutrients where we don't have a numeric standard? If we see a relatively high concentration in a stream or in the lake, what do you recommend that we do? Do you recommend that we reach out to DC, or is there really nothing that can be done without the numeric standard?
Well, you can always reach out to us. We do have a numeric standard and numeric guidance value for phosphorus in Class B waters. So, we are always looking at that data for assessments. I don't see any harm reaching out to us to let us know. But as far as assessments go, we do need water quality standards right now to come up with our assessments.
Okay, thank you.
And we can have a conversation after Grayson too, because like I said, it depends on what the emergency is, right? If it's something like a
Yeah.
spill or something you think is, you
Yeah.
know, imminently dangerous, then obviously we want to know. But if it's high phosphorus after a big rain event, that's something that's probably a little bit different than, you know,
Sure.
yeah. But let's continue that conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony.
Liz and then Mike.
Great. Thanks for those questions, Grace. And I'm also interested in some of the follow-up on that. We were all super excited to see the Finger Lakes Water Quality Grant round that came out in 2023. And I hope that that will continue into the future. And I'm just curious if you all have a sense on what the cycle of that program might look like in the future.
I don't have anything set in stone. We're trying to maintain that program annually. But I can't commit to what it's going to look like next year or the year after. But it was very popular. It was oversubscribed by quite a bit. So we're hopeful that we can continue it moving forward.
Great, thank you.
My question is to Lauren. Recently, we talked to our engineer about trying to go after a grant, and I believe it's the one that you say that's probably going to come out on Wednesday. I mean, February. It's not quite that quick. Is it also going to come out later so that because we couldn't do the part of it ready in that short time, but it might be coming out again in May, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so the WQIP program, we are part of the consolidated funding application, which is multiple state agencies release their grants all together on the same schedule, and it's usually released in May. So what I was speaking about in terms of February, that's the announcement of the awards from the 2023 round, which had closed back in September. So the new round will start hopefully, you know, in that May timeframe, and then it's typically open through July. So we accept applications through July. It got extended a little bit last year due to there was some major weather events and flooding that happened. So it ended up getting extended to the middle of August, but that's usually the timeframe that we're accepting the applications.
That was what we were assuming it would be May, June, someplace in there, and then we saw something coming out in February, so we panicked. That's more awards than.
Oh, that might have been EFC, the Environmental Facilities Corporation, released some of their grants got released in actually they just got released. So I'm wondering if that might be what you're thinking about. But you know, you'd be happy to, if you want to email me or have your consultant email me, we can chat a little bit more.
Okay, super. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? I have a one that's a sort of tangential, it's probably for Tony. It has to do with the HAB's action plans. I'm not going to be difficult. I see you're anticipating difficulties.
No, this is my resting virtual meeting face. So we're
so it's not that, I mean, they're a unique product, right? So they're not on some kind of preset schedule. But the language in them indicates that they would be reviewed and updated. Is there any capacity or plan for that in any time frame?
I think we'd have to talk about the need for it, just because, as you know, the time and capacity to generate that document was substantial. I think in lieu of the other planning documents that are in development or have been developed, I think we'd really have to think what the benefit was, rather than just maybe providing updates on what's been implemented or what the research is showing. And I don't know that we need to update a report to do that. Is that helpful?
It is helpful.
I'm just trying to wonder what the benefit of updating the document would be, because it serves its purpose for focusing on the HAPS problem. It serves its purpose for allowing for priority scoring for state grants. Maybe that's not to punt every question down the road, but maybe that's worth a discussion down the road too.
Well, right, but it's, yeah, right, so that makes me think, is there some kind of vehicle that makes sense, that's efficient to provide the whole point of those also was to drive research, right? To find answers,
Right.
to then like report on the answers that are being found in the different types of lakes. Yeah, that'd be a good discussion for later.
And I know that we're having some of this discussion in terms of progress and updating as part of the Finger Lakes Action Agenda development, which I know it's kind of happening on the side. It'll be available for public comment when we're done drafting it, just like the Great Lakes is. So I know that HABs and research are making up a big part of what the steering committee is considering important in that document.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Darby, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks. This might be a bigger question than the 3 DEC people in the room, but I know we've struggled a little bit looking at the TMDL and the 303D list of the geography, you know, the HUC 12 boundaries for the watersheds, because thinking about what was it, like 6 Mile Creek was, or I guess it was really the Cayuga Inlet was listed on the 303D list as impaired for pH, but really the site that was collected, where the sample was collected, was on 6 Mile Creek. So calling it the inlet, and thinking about how a TMDL would then get applied, it just feels like a really tricky situation. And I think another example is Fall Creek was also listed for an impairment, I think, with iron, but that was tied to the drinking water standard, and the drinking water supply is upstream of the location where those samples were collected. So, you know, how do you differentiate where the impairment, like the data is collected to point to the impairment versus like what's actually going on in the watershed, especially for the like a drinking water impairment, when the drinking water source might be somewhere else upstream of the impairment location. Does that make sense? I have a picture in my mind of all these watersheds, but you might not be able to do that with me.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I think I'll let someone else handle it.
Yeah, I think I can answer.
Classifications and assessments aren't my wheelhouse directly, so.
I can answer some of it. I think you're referring to the draft 2020 list, right? And those were kind of part of your comments, so you'll see our response once we release that. But I guess I just want to like have you understand that a water body's best use is the whole water body. So for a water body that's being used as a drinking water source, you know, we are going to assess it as a source of water supply and, you know, look at the monitoring data in comparison with our standards. But a water body that isn't used as a drinking water source, but still is Class A, we're going to do the same thing. So our assessments are really meant to be protective of the use of it, possibly as a source of water supply, but also as a source of water supply. And then for drinking water itself, you know, that's a DOH, that's DOH's purview. But our data for those waters, you know, it should be representative, and we're not necessarily going to be collecting the samples or looking at data that was collected at the intake. Does that help?
It does. I think the trouble is on some of the streams around here, the water body segments are segments. You know, you're saying the water body, but I live on Fall Creek, which is the drinking water supply for Cornell University, but the segment that's closest to me is not, you know, it's just a Class C stream. It doesn't have this, you know, I flip out because I see my neighbors with their backhoes in the water. Oh, wait, did I just say where I lived and who my neighbors are? But, you know, it's not, I can't report them to DEC.
Well, so I guess
I did just say all that.
Yeah, I think that's more of a DOH, if I'm understanding it correctly, like a DOH concern. Class A waters can be used as a source of drinking water, but Class Bs cannot. So, or CTs in your case. So yeah, that might
Right,
be a
but
change.
downstream of, so, right, but then I think about just using Fall Creek as the example, that downstream of the intake for the drinking water plant, it's still like a Class A water body, but yet upstream's not, but that's a contributing area to the drinking water. So that's where there's a real disconnect on the reality of how the water body is used.
Yeah, the classifications were developed years ago. You know, we could look into exactly when those classifications were assigned, but that's under a different program, and I think I'd want them to be in the room on that one. Yeah.
The other thing I'll just add to that in terms of how we develop TMDLs is the kind of process that DEC has been following is we try to do watershed wide TMDLs. So there might be some streams that have an impairment or the ponded water is impaired, but we're really collecting some additional data throughout the watershed to try to represent, you know, everything that's happening. So there's somewhat of a disconnect. You know, we're only required to look at that segment potentially, but we develop our modeling and the monitoring that goes into the modeling at a watershed scale. So that's why some of the TMDLs look like they're covering pretty large areas, and that's intentional.
And I apologize to my colleagues who are like, what is Darby getting into? But these are the things that drive me crazy as I am digging into 303D lists. Like, I'm doing it for you guys. Someone's got to read all these documents and just figure out how pieces together.
Well, since Darby's causing trouble, I will ask one question. It just keeps coming up at meetings. And I don't expect you to suddenly agree with me and make this giant sea change, but people keep asking and you're the right folks to respond. So a TMDL is really better for point sources. The 90 is really better for non-point sources. The monitoring data for Cayuga Lake showed that the source of phosphorus is 95+% non-point source. So people keep asking, since it's still a draft TMDL and the monitoring's all the same, basically to go into it, could it be shifted to a 9E that might be more inclusive and a better fit?
I think Lauren will stop me if I'm saying too much or the wrong thing, but I think there's a couple things against that for the southern end of Cayuga Lake, right? So the southern end of Cayuga Lake has 6 or 7 regulated point sources that discharge to it, which we know now that maybe the majority of the source of nutrients is not that, but that was one of the reasons why a TMDL was initiated. A 9-element plan cannot move a 303D water body off of category IR5 to IR4A, I think 4A, right, Sarah?
That's correct, Tony.
I'm teachable, I'm learning. And so part of the completion of the TMDL is to satisfy that Clean Water Act requirement to move water bodies from the impaired lists, right, to the ones that say we've completed the TMDL for it. And so a 9-element plan, unfortunately, just doesn't do that for us. It doesn't do it for any 9-element plan water body, not just Cayuga. And because they're largely the same, right? The analyses and the work that goes into them and the benefit of having it in terms of prioritizing for state grants are essentially the same. I don't know that doing a 9-element plan really buys Cayuga Lake anything at this point. You know, given that you know, all the other plans we talked about have their own implementation recommendations or projects that, you know, they would like to see implemented. You know, you can use those existing plans and kind of what they're trying to accomplish for phosphorus reductions on the back of the completed TMDL that prioritizes you for scoring in the grants.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
entertaining that question.
No, it's not a bad question. It's just a lot of nuanced things kind of are into the Cayuga Lake southern end issue. So it's just where we're at.
Well, and this is just sheer curiosity. So why would a TMDL, which has more power to move a water body off of an impairment list, not require implementation? I see
That's a good
smile.
question, and that's a question for EPA, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Like we said, we've never written a TMDL without an implementation section, but under whatever the nuances of the Clean Water Act, EPA approves the waste load allocations and the load allocations. Essentially, the math portion of the TMDL is approved. They look at the implementation plan and provide comment on it, but they technically do not need to approve the implementation section. So that we use that in our favor a little bit too, because that gives us the ability to update the implementation section without it having to go back to EPA for approval. So there have been TMDLs where we have updated the implementation section and then put that back out. We do like to put it out for public comment just to get feedback on it, but it does not require EPA approval.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Yes, please do share the talk. I don't know how Liz has been handling these. I don't know if they go on our website. If that's how we do it, is that all right for this talk, that it would go on our website?
I don't see why not. We can just double check and make sure that that's okay, but we have
Okay.
shared these types of slides with the public in the
Yeah,
past.
just let me know. I'm
yeah.
new to this job, so you got to watch me. I might do some crazy stuff. And again, thank you all so much for coming tonight and presenting that and entertaining our questions. And I'm sure a bunch of us will be looking for some of those other conferences and workshops and webinar opportunities where you're going to share about funding opportunities. You are welcome to stay and hear committee reports and partner reports. I will also understand it if you choose to leave.
Go put my kids to bed, but thank you so much for inviting us. And yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to any of us if you have additional questions.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Great talking to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks all.